declare the meeting open at 9:32. Start by acknowledging the Quandamooka people who are the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet this morning. And I'd also like to pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any other Indigenous Australians who may be present. In the event of an evacuation, I'd ask that you remain calm and follow my directions. The emergency exit is through the gallery doors and down the stairwell to the exit on Bloomfield Street. I'm not sure that we have any members of the public in the back room at all, but obviously there are standing orders in that space, section 8.4, which means that all members of the public present at a meeting must not, without the prior approval of the chairperson, make any audio or video recordings or take any photographs, and must remain quiet and not disrupt the meeting in any way, not bring into the meeting any signs, placards, items that may cause a hazard or interfere with any person present, be suitably dressed, and turn all mobile devices to silent mode and leave the meeting to take any calls. As chairperson, it is my responsibility to warn any member of the public present at a meeting who is not complying with any of these requirements that I may, with or without such warning, require that person to leave the meeting and not return for a period as decided by the chairperson, and that could include future meetings. Haven't been advised of any leaves of absence, so just a quick reminder once again to sign your attendance sheets, but also the responsibilities for conflicts of interest and declarable conflicts of interest, prescribed conflicts of interest. You're reminded in relation to a council's prescribed conflict of interest and declarable conflict of interest at a meeting that under Chapter 5B of the Local Government Act 2009, you have those responsibilities outlined in your agenda. And just also to be reminded that your interests must be declared at a statutory meeting of the council, and these declarations can be made any time throughout the meeting. Just a reminder that under section 150EF of the Act, the conflicts of interest provisions do not apply for ordinary business matters solely relating to the making or levying of rates and charges or the adoption of a budget. I haven't been advised, so with that, councillors, I'll present to you the Mayor's budget speech. And as you know, after many months of deliberation around this room with assistance from the organisation, today we vote to adopt a $430 million budget for Redlands Coast. The 2023-2024 your community budget recognises the tough economic conditions in which it has been framed and the cost of living pressures facing every one of us. This year more than ever, it is important to remember that this is a community budget. It was predicated on maintaining our enviable Redlands Coast lifestyle, and it is a lifestyle, might add, that is unique both in its social makeup and its geography, which comes, of course, with its own unique financial considerations and challenges. Council has made its financial decisions in respect of that uniqueness and the knowledge that it is the community's money that powers this city. This is a budget with a sharp focus on continuing to deliver for the Redlands Coast community today, while planning and safeguarding for future generations. With interest rates continuing to rise and inflation pumping up the price of nearly every product and service we consume, Council is very much aware it's a tough time for our community. So over the past 3 years, we have faced unprecedented economic issues. The global pandemic continues to affect supply chains, while the instability of China-US relations and the slow escalation in the Russian-Ukrainian war, it sends jitters through our global financial markets. And of course, Redlands Coast has not been immune to this, and neither has Council. We are, however, very fortunate that Council remains in an extremely strong financial position. Every year we strive to make our budget balance, and this year, through our continued commitment to responsible financial management, that possibility was achievable. However, knowing our community is doing it tough meant that we made the decision as a council to structure the budget with an operating deficit of about $2.1 million. And combining that against our strong cash balance affords us the opportunity to directly address the day-to-day pressures our community is currently facing. I'm extremely proud to announce today that through this year's budget, this council will establish a $500,000 civic support fund to offer rapid assistance to people in our community who are doing it really tough. Appropriate community organisations will be able to apply for funds from a $500,000 pool to address immediate community needs in their areas that are not being met by other grants or support. In many cases, we are talking about the supply of food, shelter and essential household items, the very basics to people who desperately need that support. I'm also proud to announce that with this year's budget, Council has been able to provide a wastewater subsidy within our rates and utilities charges to help ease the cost of living. The overall value of this subsidy to residents is $1.5 million. This subsidy will reduce the wastewater charge in your rates notice. Applying the subsidy against the wastewater charge was found to be the most fair and equitable way of passing on this saving to ratepayers citywide. It is targeted financial assistance to those who need it most. Together, these two initiatives provide immediate benefits totalling $2 million as reflected by our operating deficit. Council's overall financial strength positions us well to fund key long-term infrastructure projects that will benefit today's generation and those to come. This includes progressing catalyst projects in our future Redlands corporate plan to 2026 and beyond, such as the Birkdale Community Precinct and the Wynham Creek Priority Development Area project. This budget addresses the current economic climate while looking to the long-term forecast. Intergenerational equity has been a major consideration during this year's budget's preparation. It's about securing financial stability and sustainability for our city, not just now, but as it continues to grow over the following decades to achieve generational fairness. Council borrows money to fund the construction of long-life assets to ensure that the cost of those assets is shared equally by community members that will benefit from the asset over the long term. We have responsibly managed our infrastructure charges, which are reported monthly. This now equates to $100 million being held in reserve to fund new capital works in our corporate plan. Council's cash balance will earn more than $11 million in interest revenue, which has directly reduced the financial burden on raising rates and charges. This is just one part of the intricate planning and structure required for this budget to limit the passing on of increasing costs to our ratepayers and instead spread the burden across more than one generation. During tough economic times, there is a balance that has to be struck between proactive and reactive to the financial climate. The 2023-2024 Your Community budget achieves just that. Looking at it in detail, this year's budget includes delivery of a targeted and sensible capital expenditure program valued at more than $135.7 million. More than half of Council's capital spend for 2023-2024 will go towards roads and infrastructure, including key intergenerational projects that will bring significant benefits to our community well into the future. This budget provides $53.37 million for transport, roads and traffic projects, which include $40.5 million for the continuation of the Wellington Street Panorama Drive road duplication project at Thornlands that will largely complete Stage 1 from Boundary Road to South Street. $5.48 million for an upgrade to Double Jump Road, Victoria Point. Drainage upgrade and expansion to cost around $2 million for Abelia and Ravinia Streets in Alexandra Hills. And another $6.29 million will be used for road renewals, reseals and resurfacing across the city. There is also $1.67 million set aside for the Footpath Gap program that will create active connections in all parts of the city by filling in the missing pieces. This program goes further than interconnectedness. It will encourage more residents to enjoy and use the pathways leading to better health, well-being and other social values. To put the capital expenditure on transport and roads into perspective, Council manages and maintains more than 1,300 kilometres of roads and almost 700 kilometres of footpaths, cycleways, paths, tracks and trails. We're also responsible for about 134 bridges, almost 700 bus stops, 200 car parks and close to 680 kilometres of stormwater pipes. Redlands Coast has 335 kilometres of coastline that we are responsible for, making us so unique in the southeast. And with this comes the financial challenges that are not faced by many other councils. Our city proudly includes 6 island communities who contribute strongly to the identity of our Redlands Coast. These communities and council understand the increased cost of services, transport and other factors associated with living on these islands. And we understand too well the lack of recognition this receives from other levels of government. These are regional challenges but are not treated as regional by state or Commonwealth when council is applying for funding. Reduced and in some instances reduced and in some instances non-existent financial support from state and Commonwealth means Council is actually picking up the tab for island infrastructure and associated maintenance. Unlike state government transport hubs where TransLink provides park and rides for facilities for their clients, Council is required to pay for and provide these facilities on the islands and on our mainland. So while we don't accept that inequity, we still continue to advocate for a better state and Commonwealth investment, because Council does not shirk its commitments, and this year's budget, as in previous years, includes significant funding for our island communities. The Southern Moreton Bay Islands Ferry Terminals Upgrade Project is a jointly funded project with the state of $48.6 million, with Redland City Council, contributing $17.1 million. This impressive project is nearing completion and is an integral part of Council's program to make it easier for residents and visitors to commute and travel to and from the islands. So in this year's budget, $301,000 is set aside for the completion stage of the ferry terminals upgrade, which will happen in partnership with the state government, as well as another $301,000 towards completion works at the associated commuter interchanges on Lamb, Russell, Macleay and Parragara Islands. Southern Moreton Bay Islands will also receive $2 million for green sealing of the roads on these islands. This brings the total spend on green sealing Southern Moreton Bay Island roads to $19 million since the program started in 2016. North Stradbroke Island in Jerrabah will benefit with $1.5 million for upgrades to the Dunwich wastewater treatment plant, $350,000 for Point Lookout Road upgrade, and $200,000 has been budgeted for seawall and causeway renewal at Dunwich. This investment in our islands not only makes them a better place to live and visit, it also creates jobs and drives economic opportunities for our entire city. So in terms of future building for our city, this budget provides $33.85 million infrastructure projects, including $9.92 million to fund the next stage of the exciting Birkdale Community Precinct, enabling the restoration of the historic Willards Farm, and also $8.61 million for the continued redevelopment of the Wynnum Creek Hub at Redland Bay, which will become a real focal point for the southern Redlands coast, and ultimately help address a major pain point for community around vehicle parking and accessibility. Excuse me. The third largest capital spend in the budget is $23.65 million for essential water, waste and wastewater projects to ensure we maintain our high standard of service delivery to our community. The allocation in this area includes new work such as $3.22 million for the Kinross Road Sewerage Trunk Line at Thornlands and $5.87 million for Victoria Point Central Gravity Trunk Expansion. The Council takes our green economy seriously, and we strive to ensure our waste program continues to evolve to be greener, cleaner and more efficient. And this is why we've formed an alliance with Logan and Ipswich Council to develop a regional material recovery facility working towards a sustainable local circular economy with an allocation of nearly $7 million for 23-24. We will transition to purchasing hybrid vehicles for our council fleet and deliver initiatives to achieve our green goals across our Redlands coast. In particular, $365,000 has been set aside in this budget to expand our smart solar compacting rubbish bins program. This follows a successful trial of 10 smart solar bins, including at Wellington Point Recreation Reserve, over the past year or so. The 240-litre smart solar bins can compact up to 8 times the standard bin volume while providing valuable data around usage and fullness. This means fewer collections are necessary and considerable savings can be made. I'd also like to note that while we've been hit with increases in the cost of waste disposal and recycling, our recycling and waste centres will continue to remain free to our residents. Rounding out the capital spend in the 23-24 budget, $8.7 million will be spent on marine and foreshore projects to further enhance our glorious coastlines. It includes $3.1 million for revetment wall construction at Seacrest Court and Masthead Drive North in Cleveland. Also, $6.7 million will be spent on local parks, open space and conservation areas, including $1.1 million for the renewal of Redland Bay's popular Point Talberkin Park, $1.2 million for upgrades to the William Taylor Memorial Sports Field, and $2.5 million for remedial work on the Wellington Point Esplanade landslip. A further $7.8 million has been set aside for other capital works projects and $1.67 million for community and cultural development. This will include $803,000 for building works at the Redlands Performing Arts Centre, with additional funding for the continuation of our popular arts and library programs. Council also supports some 70 sport and recreation groups, and this budget continues that strong commitment to sport, including $1.6 million for a new sports building at Charlie Buckler's Sports Field at Redland Bay. Council's strong financial position has allowed for investment in digital technology across the organisation, and this budget includes $4.8 million investment this financial year for advancing the digital transformation program, which is a catalyst project identified in Council's corporate plan. This program will increase efficiencies across the organisation, providing cost savings and better provision of services to our community. It will also increase efficiencies in our customers' interactions with Council to make it a better and easier experience. The program will ensure our digital systems remain robust and secure. Businesses and government are increasingly facing threats to their cybersecurity, and Council believes that protection of our community's private data is absolutely paramount. The digital transformation program is expected to run over a 4 to 7 year time frame and will deliver significant community, customer and organisational benefits. As I mentioned at the outset, Council has been at the mercy of the current financial climate, but we have and will continue to do all that is possible to absorb the impacts that are being felt rather than passing them on to our ratepayers. Council has maintained our same level of services by driving efficiencies and finding other ways of delivering on standards. So let me assure you that Council has worked tirelessly to keep this year's rates rise as low as possible through scrutinising both the costs and the revenues. The increase to the minimum general rate will be $1.02 per week, or 4.65% for rating category 1A, our residential owner-occupiers. We appreciate and value our older residents and pensioners, and this budget includes total pensioner remissions and rebates of approximately $3.6 million. Pensioner remission will continue at $335 per year for a full pensioner and $167.50 for a part pensioner. When setting the minimum general rate increase, Council took into consideration the Brisbane's Consumer Price Index, or CPI, which is currently running at 7.4%. And we are determined to maintain that increase at less than that. Currently, the Local Government Associations of Queensland's Council Cost Index is 6.9% as a weighted average across all local government areas. Minimum general rate increase of $1.02 per week needs to be considered in the context of the effects of inflation, where on average we are paying $75 per week more in mortgage repayments than this time last year, $30 more on our grocery bills, and where electricity costs will jump another $7.20 per week from July 1. Unlike many of our neighbouring councils, we don't have the luxury of extensive rate revenue from large commercial and industrial sectors. Well over 50% of our general rates and utility charges revenue is from rateable residential properties. And unlike other councils, we don't have extensive high-density housing and high-rises to add to the rate space. We're a city with a population of around 165,000 people compared to Brisbane with 2.5 million people, Gold Coast with 730,000 people, and Logan with 360,000 people. We are growing at a much smaller percentage to many of those, and our population rate is currently 1.32% per annum, which is lower than Brisbane, while our neighbouring LGA, Logan, is currently growing at 3.58%. This means we have a smaller rate base to work with, and yet we continue to punch above our weight. So in conclusion, let me take this opportunity to thank my fellow councillors for the strong debate, passionate attitudes that were expressed during the long and lengthy budget preparation workshops to achieve the best possible result for our city at this time. Every council and every councillor faces strong pressures at budget time to continue to deliver even more for our communities, and my fellow councillors have once again risen to that challenge admirably and amicably. So on behalf of councillors, I'd like to now take this opportunity to thank the Chief Executive Officer, Andrew Chesterman, for his commitment to maintaining a council-wide culture of working to get the best value for our community money. And our CEO, who may elaborate on this a bit later, introduced an expenditure review committee that spent days working through the costs of the business. I'd also like to extend our sincere appreciation to our executive leadership team, and in particular our Chief Financial Officer, Deborah Corbett-Hall, and her exceptional finance team for their expertise and support to Council, not only through the budget preparation period, but across the entire year. So thank you so much. They have forensically reviewed every cent of operational spending to ensure this council runs as fiscally efficient as it possibly can, while providing the services our city's residents require and indeed deserve. I'd also like to thank the many council officers from across so many departments who have answered questions, provided advice and statistics, and worked tirelessly to bring this budget to reality. As we approach what no doubt will be another financial year filled with unpredictable regional challenges and global uncertainty, what we can be certain of is that our city will face these times with financial stability as a direct result of the past and our ongoing sensible fiscal management. This year's Your Community Budget is delivered from a culture of responsible government. It is a budget that is responsive to what our community has asked of us, and it is a budget that is respectful of our community's money and their resources. So with that, councillors, on behalf of all of you, I am pleased to present the 2023-2024 budget. So with that, I'll now hand over to the CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good morning, councillors, and our team at the back of the room and those watching online. During my time as CEO at Redland City Council, we've seen this budget development process go through a whole range of symptoms and characteristics of what's happening in the community through COVID, through the COVID times, and now I guess we're in the post-COVID times. But they're the challenges that we're facing. And sadly, those COVID times are still prevalent in our organisation and our community, not only in terms of the health respects that it affects our people, but also the way it impacts on operations at Redland City Council. I've met with many CEOs across many different industries, and the challenges that are facing us are no different to the challenges facing them, both from not only budgeting but also being able to deliver against the budgets, because some of the challenges are not only national but they're global challenges. I've watched the interest rates rise, as we all have, every month in the current financial year, and we've seen those impacts directly on council's operations from prices rising, and not just the prices of inventory or raw materials, but prices and availability of contractors and tradespeople. And we know that the increasing cost for the upcoming budget that we've got in front of us here puts some pressures on all of us to mitigate costs, and the Mayor has already spoken to some of the things we've put in place to try and reduce the effects on the resident and the community and reduce our costs across our organisation. Some of the things we put in place is we have a business transformation program throughout the organisation, which works right across the organisation to look for efficiencies, savings and cost avoidance. And the work that that team does is evidence-based. It's like our own internal consulting team. They look at cost-benefit opportunities and getting the best outcome for every dollar that we spend. We frequently review all of our major projects, because as they move through their various life stages, we end up with different challenges that are some of a global scale. We have created and now recruited a new Chief Procurement Officer. Really pleased to have a new CPO in our organisation who will take our strategic procurement to the next level. And as the Mayor mentioned, we've created an expenditure review committee which scrutinise line by line every part of this organisation with our senior leadership team, with the support of their operational leadership group. We've been through every line in the organisation, and we'll continue to do that year on year from now. We've looked at, and I guess one of the things for me as CEO I'm really pleased to hear, is the language that people used about waste elimination or reduction in spend. And we know people are using lean methodologies, they're bundling work packages, strategic procurement, as I've mentioned. We've in fact built into this budget a stretch target that is included in this budget to look at savings from strategic procurement, and that is now a task for the whole organisation to step up and achieve that reduction in expenditure through improved procurement processes. The purchase and disposal costs of operational materials in a large, diverse organisation is constantly increasing, and I wanted to bring this to light for you with some examples. Chemical supplies up $1.3 million, bitumen, concrete, gravel and landscaping supplies up $1.2 million, plumbing and electrical material supplies $900,000, disposal of biosolids $2.4 million more. Parts and materials in excess of $2 million. Steel used in construction used to be about $1,200 a tonne. It's risen to $2,200. It's settled at about $2,000 a tonne now. Concrete pipes have a delay of somewhere between 12 and 18 months for certain sizes. These are things that are affecting not only our industry but every industry across Australia and indeed the globe. Insurance premiums up $2 million. We've all seen insurance premiums rise on our own home front. And higher rates, so a grader that used to be $150 an hour, $250 an hour now. So we look at our employee costs as well. Now about a third of our costs are employee related, and of course council has not been immune to what's called the Great Resignation. We have turnover here, as every organisation has at the moment, and that's a challenge for us. But we've streamlined processes and really pleased that we know people are joining this organisation because of its location, because of its wonderfully natural landscape and its environment and the culture. About a third of our operating expense is employee related, and we've had a couple of two very fair enterprise bargaining agreement increases. Those costs affect over 1,000 employees, and we have to remember nearly, I think 3/4 of them live in this city, so it affects them as well. We've had other important resources at council are our property, plant and equipment. We're the custodian of many community assets, as you know. We have asset valuation increases at the 30th of June in excess of 5% and possibly as much as 10%. And we know that we talk about depreciation on our operating result. Those depreciation costs are now more than $75 million. So that's a big part of our challenge. Our fleet equipment has been challenging with both availability and increases to prices and availability of parts. But the cost of fuel has not just impacted council for its own vehicles. Contracts that council enters into can fluctuate with fuel movements, so they're written into those contracts. New plant can take 18 months to arrive, by which time prices have also increased. We often get asked about the lease versus buy question. We are constantly working on that equation. It's not a simple always lease, always buy, but it's a strategy that you take depending on the market and depending on the goods and the facilities that you actually need in the organisation. Our major projects, we have a range of major projects across the organisation that have been written into our corporate plan, and they're of significant size or cost. We have a major projects executive that looks at gateways to make sure that those gateways get followed and that we look at value for money achievement at every decision point. They all have complexity with the things that I've mentioned, whether it's contractors, procurement, statutory requirements, raw material availability, and with complexity sometimes comes opportunity. We had an annual industry briefing this year on the 31st of May, which was a new initiative from our infrastructure and operations team. We're keen to work with suppliers, consultants, contractors to get win-win outcomes in changing and challenging infrastructure times. It was really well attended, and I commend the team for doing that. Our budgeting in local government with the consumer price index, as the Mayor mentioned, around 7% year on year with possible increases. The challenge is harder when our basket of goods, which is often talked about in the media, our basket of goods is not like the average consumer. So we buy gravel, we buy turf, we buy electricity, water, and we buy a lot of raw materials. And fuel, as you know, is an expense that we're all facing at the moment. $750,000 this year is budgeted for fuel. And our fuel spend is over $750,000 this financial year and is budgeted over $900,000 next year. Electricity is our 6th highest operating purchase at the end of May this year, well over $5 million. We've budgeted $6.2 million in this coming year for electricity. They're for our streetlights, our community facilities, our libraries, our wastewater treatment plants, and a significant portion of electricity costs, up to 75% of that, is based on fixed network costs set by the Australian Energy Regulator as a cost to be connected to the electricity grid. And the remaining costs are based on the retail price and consumption at each site. We're facing significant increases with electricity bills by up to 27% this year. Finally, with all of these cost pressures, which are not just unique to us, what is unique to us is that 90% of our property database is residential. That's a really significant number. 90% of our property database is residential. This is quite different to our neighbouring councils when comparisons like to be made. Less than 3% of the property database is commercial or industrial. Less than 3%. 90% is residential. We're blessed as a city with an archipelago of islands, and as the Mayor said, with those marine frontages come a whole lot of challenges and increased expenditure. You do anything by the marine environment and you know, rule of thumb, multiply it by a couple, maybe even more. The mitigation that's used this current year and for future years is to work harder, work smarter, buy better and buy smarter. Can I thank all the councillors? You have 16 touch points and 16 different points of interaction with this budget over many, many months. And can I thank you all for workshopping the complexity of this budget. It's tough to pull a $400+ million budget together. It's never easy, and I can assure the community that this is a result of many compromises in the spirit of cooperation. To all of our employees, the operational, the senior and the executive leadership teams, thanks for the way you've approached this. The finance team, it's been a privilege, and it is a privilege to lead such a capable team who put the community and this city at the heart of everything they do. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, CEO. So, councillors, as has been tradition for any budget that I have been able to chair, I allow some time for each of you. We have the 80-20 rule. Nobody here loves budget time, in 100% of it at least. And so we give you an opportunity to talk about the pros and the cons from your perspective for your communities. So if that's okay, councillors, I now would like to suspend council standing orders, but just before I do so, just to explain to you that as I said, we do this at each meeting to allow you 5 minutes to speak to the budget. It's your opportunity to provide your thoughts. It's positive and constructive and on the overall budget that's tabled today. But when we suspend standing orders, I'd like to exclude sections 8.1.1, 8.1.3, 8.1.5 and 8.1.8 that relate to councillor conduct and unsuitable meeting conduct process. So please remember also that section 7.5.6 of council standing orders will be suspended and no debate may occur. So may I have a mover for that? Thank you. Mover and seconder. Moved Councillor Hughes, seconded Councillor Mitchell. And just to be clear, I'm asking you to move that council meeting standing orders are suspended, excluding sections 8.1.1, 8.1.3, 8.1.5, 8.1.8 and the unsuitable meeting conduct process to allow you up to 5 minutes each to speak to the budget. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Those against? Okay, those in favour? Moved Councillor Mitchell, Golay, Hewlett, Edwards, Tolte, Mackenzie, Hughes, Berridge, Bishop Williams. Those against, Councillor Boglari. So with that, councillors, I'll start, as I said earlier, I'll start in the middle and then work like this. So if I could, I'll hand over to you, Councillor Tolte, if you'd like to start with your presentation on the budget.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As has been noted, many hours and days of meetings by councillors and the executive leadership team, and many more hours and days of department officer time across all areas of council and through the whole of the previous year have gone into decisions reflected through the pages of the document that constitutes this budget. It has been difficult, especially in the current climate, with councillors cognizant of the pressure of cost of living impacts and rising interest rates on our families. This has been a tough year, following on from the COVID years, and it's fair to say the impacts are being felt across the entire community, including across the organisation of council. As councillors, we've had to make decisions in the best interests of the whole city, equity and fairness, and to ensure the organisation of council remains resilient and is fiscally prepared to weather the current environment of inflation and staffing challenges in order to deliver as expected on behalf of our community and residents. In addition to the obvious challenges faced by council, such as staff retention, material shortages and price inflation, greater challenges have been thrust upon our community through larger issues, such as associated costs from more convoluted environmental and EPBC assessments and requirements, and growing legal expenses from court and native title challenges. These are big ticket items that do not result in tangible assets the community can measure for themselves. For those residents in the south of the city, this budget continues several significant funding commitments for park, recreation and sporting infrastructure, and continues to be a major deficit, and Council continues to work on major projects to address this. In this budget, facilities at Charlie Buckler Sports Fields will continue to be improved, and we look to moving to construction of the Heinemann Road facility and the new fields earmarked for Shoreline. I look forward to seeing a new clubhouse and improved facilities for the Cyclones and the Sharks cricket, as well as the improved dog-off leash area at Charlie Buckler. Council continues to progress major projects in the Heinemann Road Sports Precinct, as well as engineering and state applications for new boating, recreation and trailer parking facility, with both of these being long-term projects that will come together over many budgets. Wynham Creek foreshore and infrastructure continue to improve. This year we've opened the new club facilities for both the RSL sub-branch and the Dragon Boat Club, after having moved the SES out of the redevelopment area and into their state-of-the-art new home in the previous year. This next year will see continuing improvement, and while some disruption is unavoidable, the entire community will be better off for it in the long term. Indeed, this is a pivotal budget in many respects, with Redland poised to benefit over the next decade from major projects to improve roads and public transport corridors, connectivity, business connections, sporting and recreational facilities. There is a great deal to look forward to through the rest of this decade, and decisions going forward will be crucial in ensuring Redland gets the full benefit, both economically and socially, from the opportunities coming our way. We do not want to continue to send 70% of our workforce out of the city to work every day. We need local jobs growth, and the opportunities needed to provide those jobs are sitting on the starting blocks across the city. Toondah, Wynham, Heinemann, business and industrial projects, the Birkdale Adventure Precinct, the Rescue and Resilience Hub, as well as burgeoning tourism opportunities to our natural wonderful Redland coast, are all developing and poised to take advantage of the coming population boom of the southeast quarter of Queensland over the next 10 years. Our residents can look forward to prosperity, quality of environment and lifestyle, and equity for themselves and their children. As has been noted, the opportunities are there, and this budget seeks to address the concerns of the current economic climate while preparing the way forward for greater prosperity and opportunity for our community. This is not a time for fear and naysaying. This is a time to seize those opportunities for the sake of our future generations. And with that, I commend the organisation and the Mayor on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tolti. Councillor Boglari? I'm assuming you want to speak for 5 minutes, yeah?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realise I was next. Thank you for that. Every year a budget is delivered and each councillor has a chance to voice their own opinion. A councillor is not to be focused on their own divisions, but what is best for the whole of the city and our future generations. To arrive at this point, there are several workshops where the costs involved in delivering the services are discussed, the increase required to cover these expenses, projects to be included in our capital works and operational works projects. Everything is discussed and direction is finally given by the majority of councillors. Financial formulas then have to be calculated by our council officers to arrive at the final figures as to what required rates revenue is needed to add to the revenue from the already discussed fees and charges, grants, interest revenue and other revenue to cover the costs of these programs. There are so many elements of a budget development and also prior to that stage, and I want to thank our skilled team wholeheartedly, not just the finance team but all the teams wholeheartedly for their due diligence and patience throughout the workshops, because I think we do test you at times. Listening to councillors' direction, giving us their feedback and then collating all that information and producing a budget according to that political direction. It is not a straightforward and it cannot be an easy task for them. So all council staff, I feel, have been professionally navigated this process and I thank them. I understand the range of revenue raising options and I am pleased this year that council is using some debt, allowing a deficit, interest raised and phasing of projects to also raise funds and take some stress off our rate base. It isn't these mechanisms that is my concern, but the timing and purpose of various projects, which I am calling into question. I could perhaps have supported the budget if it was based on more appropriate projects and projects' timing for Redlands with more realistic deliverability and affordable timelines. In December 2020, the majority of councillors adopted a corporate plan. This document became Council's overarching document which informs Council of priority projects, annual budgets and operations. This year's capital works is $135 million, which sounds very grand, but we've also got predicted carryovers still to be advised, which could be up to another $50 million. Historically, Council cannot deliver more than approximately $70 million in a year due to resources, weather and other impacts. I have concerns with this year's large works programs as it is being dominated by a corporate plan which I didn't support at the time due to future funding concerns. However, now due to the change in both global and domestic economic conditions, with current market conditions significantly different to as recently as just 6 months ago, certain building materials have tripled over the last year, and in my opinion it is evident the projects in the corporate plan need to be reassessed. The budgeted capital works program for this year, in my opinion, recklessly exceeds what Council's actual historical delivery is by some 92%. Last year it exceeded it by 65%. In March, I sought clarity regarding the affordability and programming of several of Council's future commitments for the various large projects Council is embarking upon. At this point, I would like to clarify these words are mainly from my last year's speech, and that was March last year. I simply need to change a few figures as my concerns remain relevant and is becoming even more concerning. I need to be able to reassure my community that Council is providing not only an exciting future, and there are many projects I am excited about, but also is providing a responsible budget for today's climate, a back to basic, best value for dollar budget. The world acknowledges the unprecedented global challenges over the past 3 years, which has turned the world economy on its head, and only this weekend a quote in the Financial Review is, "We are in uncharted economic times," and these impacts are remaining with us. Costs in many areas, as previously stated, have gone up 30 to 40%. So in my opinion, Council cannot continue as usual, as much as we might like to, and drive these large, unrealistic projects as we can't expect our residents to cover these costs. While I remain excited about Redland's future and several projects, our community is financially hurting now, and with all the financial impacts coming from all different sectors, it's time to reassess. We need to understand that master plans for projects might have fitted a certain point of time. However,
Just
with the
advise you,
change,
Councillor Boglari, you have 5 minutes.
okay.
You just want to wrap up?
With the changes in the world, we need to explore other options due to these pressures. We need to look at the projects and reassess their deliverability to make sure that Redlands can afford them, perhaps longer phasing or diving into the projects to ensure they are essential. There are so many aspects and projects in this budget I do support. However, I would like to seek realistic financial and project forecasts to understand the future impacts on our community, not just now but also into the future. I believe councillors need to consider the needs of the city with sound policies and principles to guide the decision making so that legacy for the future is affordable and we are delivering what is required for today and future Redlands generations.
Thank you, Councillor Boglari. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. Each year presents its own challenges when delivering a budget. The past 3 years have presented a worldwide pandemic and the state government increasing land valuations across our city on average 25%. The past year has seen a significant rise in inflation, largely due to the cost of construction and increasing interest rate rises. These factors are not lost on council or councillors because we too are affected by these. With this in mind, we have worked hard with our financial team to deliver a budget that is below Redland's blended CPI and to accept an operational deficit of $2 million. The operational deficit will be used to deliver cost of living relief to our residents via a rebate on the wastewater charge and to establish a civic support fund. The civic support fund will allow community organisations to apply for financial assistance from Council for programs and initiatives that provide cost of living support for Redlands residents in need. Community organisations and individuals will also benefit from $1.7 million in grants and sponsorships. In addition to the grants and sponsorships funding, Council will contribute over $600,000 towards events held across the city, including our main Christmas event and the Village Events and Activation Grant, or VAGs as we commonly refer to them as. The VAGs are a place-based program that supports local community organisations and village traders to create initiatives that build community connection across the city in 10 local centres. We are continuing in the partnership with Logan and Ipswich councils to deliver the Regional Approach to Waste Resource Management program, and this ongoing initiative is a great example of what can be achieved when local governments work together to resolve the same issues surrounding our residents' waste. The significant investment Council is making over the next year is in transport, roads and traffic. We continue to deliver the upgrade of Wellington Street Panorama Drive, which is the major connector from Boundary Street to Shore Street and to our hospital. Our libraries, Performing Arts Centre, Art Gallery and community halls will continue to be invested in with an injection of $1.8 million. A frustrating factor of our budget is the ongoing cost shifting from the state government to Council. Antisocial behaviour, hooning and vandalism are policing matters. However, Council is having to spend ratepayers' money on CCTV and mobile security cameras to manage these issues and to protect our community assets. In addition to that is the cost of delivering and maintaining public transport infrastructure. And I'm referring, of course, to our island ferry terminals and associated parking. If the state funds park and ride facilities for buses and trains, they should also be funding the same for our ferries to the islands. However, again, ratepayers are having to bear the burden of what should be a state cost. Some specific highlights in the budget for Division 7 residents are drainage upgrades in Alexandra Circuit, upgrades to Lorikeet Drive Park in Thornlands, upgrades to Quatona Road West Park in Calabar, sewage infrastructure in Kinross Road, pedestrian safety improvements at the Panorama Drive South Street intersection, footpath expansions in Kingston Avenue, Beach Street, Redland Bay Road and curb ramps in Alexandra Circuit. And this year by the Community Infrastructure Program, I'll be expanding the solar lighting program in Windermere Road Park and installing picnic table seating in 7 Oak Street Park. The project I'm relieved to see in this year's budget is the footpath along Kinross Road out to Boundary Street, and I'd like to thank my Kinross Estate community for your ongoing assistance in advocating for this project to highlight the safety concerns of pedestrians and cyclists, particularly the school students making their way along Kinross Road to access the bus stop on Boundary Road. Other parts of the budget I'd like to draw attention to are the Environment and Coastal Management Separate Charge and the Operational Plan. The Redlands has over 4,900 hectares of conservation areas and green space along with 335 kilometres of coastline that we need to manage and protect. The separate charge assists in funding the vital works required to maintain and enhance our environmental and coastal assets. The operational plan sets out the measurable initiatives and actions over the next year that directly relate to achieving our commitments outlined in our corporate plan. Just some of the projects and initiatives that we will undertake include continuing to advocate for our islands to be recognised as regional status by the state and federal governments, implement the Stronger Communities strategy and action plans, collaborate with schools, tertiary education providers, business and industry communities to advance education opportunities in the Redlands, investigate opportunities to activate our coastline, finalise the development of a network plan for cycleway and pedestrian infrastructure, and implementing a mid-term strategy and develop a long-term strategy for the MacArthur Street land in Alexandra Hills. With its commitment to major projects, managing our environment, supporting our community organisations and delivering the operational plan, this year's budget highlights the diverse work that Council does in and for our community. And thank you to our executive and senior leadership teams, especially our Chief Financial Officer, for their guidance through the development of this year's budget, and I'd like to thank our Council officers in advance for the good work they will do over the next year in delivering the work set out in this budget.
Thanks, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll certainly be supporting the budget forecast before us today. It's a balanced and responsible budget delivering not only for today's needs but also prepares our city for the future. And because of the challenges around the world, because of the rising interest rates and all the rest, there's no more important time that we prepare for the future in a responsible and balanced way, not close things down. The budget reflects thousands of hours of research and collaborations between officers, councillors, the community and experts. And again, I'd like to highlight the 16 touch points where we've all had, as a group of council cohort, some fantastic input. So I commend all of you for that. I want to start with some of the ongoing challenges that we will face. We've faced in the last 8 years, 12 years, and it's only getting worse. The lack of what I believe is adequate support from our state and federal partners. This adding tens of millions of dollars of bills to a budget every single year. So we ask for our community's help in advocacy to the state and federal governments. Some of the examples are the large infrastructure programs that are around, police resourcing, the legislative, legal and compliance burden costs that are being shifted onto local councils, which is unfair. Here in Division 2 and Redlands, we've been impacted socially and economically with things that are both opportunities but also risks. Native title claim legal matters, state planning court matters, the speeding and hooning, vandalism, youth crime, examples around the William Street boat ramp, expensive federal government environmental referrals that we receive no assistance with, speculative class actions by international insurance companies, our challenges to our remote island communities and under-delivery of economic transitions on North Stradbroke Island, including ferry terminals. So I do ask our community to contact the state and federal members in support of our local community. We are all state and federal citizens, so we need their help. I don't also agree with everything our council delivers, or our group of councillors sometimes deliver. And some of those things, Amity Point, I believe your gravel roads, Chettle Street, Old Barlow Street, Gira Street should be sealed now. It's been too long. Commercial area, for example, down at Raby Bay Foreshore Park, incredibly important area. But we haven't delivered even basic support for that commercial area down there. In fact, a master plan for Raby Bay Foreshore Park, one of our most popular parks in the city, needs to be brought forward and done. Council's own accommodation is in our corporate plan, but needs to be brought forward, not for just the efficiencies that'll bring our staff and helping to attract and retain wonderful employees, but also as a fantastic vote of confidence in the Cleveland Town Centre and the improvements that would bring to the public realm, that we should be funding and bringing that forward. And a master plan of the Cleveland Showgrounds, which would also help unlock those wonderful projects at Heineman Road, Birkdale, and beyond. Some of the wonderful things that are in this year's budget for my area. The Cleveland Aquatic Centre receives another increase of $416,000. The Footpath Gap Program, pedestrians first, should be our mantra across this city. 1.7 million for our pedestrian-friendly city. The Solar Bin Program, where that's fantastic to help protect our popular tourist and foreshore areas from not only the amenity that loose waste can have an impact, but also most of these are our foreshore and bay areas, and we don't want those products ending up in our bay. Vassy Concord Park gets an upgrade of $400,000, Raby Bay Harbour Park and others. And I'm pleased to see an investment in mobile security cameras, even though that really should be the police and state government responsibility. On North Stradbroke Island, the capital works have been mentioned. The seawall and causeway at Junner Street, Dunwich Wastewater Treatment Plant, $1.5 million. That's fantastic tourism support, but also great support for population growth in our area. Ron Stark Oval gets some coastal protective upgrade, and there's more. I won't go through the detail. There's also some great planning and design work with some of the road works at Amity around the car trailer unit, and also here on the mainland. And that allows projects to be shovel ready. Capital Works often gets a headline, but our operational budget is larger and probably more significant in many ways. $100 million, looking after our council staff. Those 4% rate rises are a great investment in helping to deliver great services for our city. The community grants and sponsorship opportunities, $1.7 million for small and large projects across our city.
Councillor Mitchell, just time reminder.
Including major events. So that's fantastic. This budget helps to support us not today, but also over the 1, 5 and 20 years ahead. We've together succeeded in keeping ratepayer burden under real CPI. The $2 million in cost of living support, we should be proud to help deliver. This budget maintains services valued by our community, the ongoing service delivery, and we are collecting just enough revenue to keep the lights on, but also to keep opportunities open across generations. I'm pleased to support today's budget.
Thanks, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor. My fellow councillors, Mr Chesterman, our ELT, and as always, our Chief Financial Officer, Deborah Corbett-Hall, and her strong team, Michael and co. Please convey our thanks and my thanks. Very much appreciated. They've worked around the clock, has been said this year, to ensure accuracy of advice, and their guidance is truly appreciated. The term business as usual, BAU, is bandied about often within government, but over the past couple of years we have lived experience that there is now no such thing. The definition of BAU has changed. It is so much harder to accomplish the business of council, and the daily challenges our administration faces are pretty damn frustrating. But put simply, they are real, and these impacts have reverberated all the way through council down to our residents. About 70,000 property owners who this year through their general rates will cover about 28%, that being $121 million contribution to run our city this year from their general rates. So it's a significant contribution that our residents make, and we've got a budget, as the Mayor has mentioned, of $430 million. Thank you. As mentioned last year, and I reiterate that again, I'm worried about the impact of such a large capital program of $136 million, noting that we usually deliver about 60 to 80 million. I understand the combined difficulty in labour shortages, increased costs and supply chain challenges that our Mayor and CEO have mentioned already, that Council has now introduced projects that span several years to ensure that Council can continue to deliver an extensive capital program. Councillors have received assurances from our executive leadership team that money collected for these works are carried over within the budget year on year. Work does not stop 30 June, they continue, and councillors have been assured that residents only pay once. A real-time example of challenges of staff retention and attraction came about recently when I was chatting to a resident walking her puppy. She mentioned she was an engineer with a large company and had applied for a job at council, and she got it. But she was quick to answer my question before I asked. She was very emphatic. Council could not afford her, which is another challenge that the CEO has mentioned. And this lady lives just around the corner. Was really disappointing to hear, but that's a simple fact of life. This year I would like to share a bit more detail about Council's fleet. We have an enormous array of, I'm going to say it very technically, thingamajigs on wheels, and following on from the CEO, this year's budget is about $5 million in the capital program for renewals. I asked the question, do we really need to spend that much money on fleet? And the reply I received was pretty specific, and I would like to share with you very briefly. It might not seem a lot, but 27 light commercials, 3 mowing, 10 passenger vehicles, 11 trailers, 9 trucks over 7 tonne, 4 trucks under 7 tonne, 5 vans, 2 yellow plant large, 2 yellow plant small. That's a total of 73 new additions to fleet, but our fleet is about 400, give or take, on any set of days. There's 400 things out there that council run, thingamajigs, very technical term, on wheels. That's our fleet. Council has an enormous footprint across the city, in that includes that a myriad essential functions that sometimes the tools required to support our city can be unseen right in front of us every time you drive past a council vehicle or something like that, because I really was a bit concerned about the $5 million. So thank you to the officers that responded. An enormous focus of mine has been and will always be our landfill sites, predominantly our sporting grounds and our Birkdale Recycle and Waste Centre, because that's mine. I know Councillor Tolte has Redland Bay. Each year Council has a complex accounting standard for provision of works towards the maintenance of these 28 legacy sites across the city. We know that in coming years Council will be spending a large amount of money
Councillor Hughes,
towards
just advising you that it's time.
the capping and associated works at Judy Holt Reserve in Birkdale, particularly impacting my Muddies football. I'll jump forward, I had a bit more to say there. As a councillor, I work towards achieving the best outcomes for my Division 8, and I would like to flag the skate park at John Fredericks Park that's coming due in years to come. And we're not looking as a local community for a whole refurbishment, they're just looking for a revamp there. And in closing, I'd like to share my biggest disappointment, and yet again, the park at Tulloch Road, Wellington Point. That park has been in the capital program for a few years now, and again it's missed out this year. And in closing, thank you, Mayor, for your indulgence. I can't help but say it loud and clear. It is my thoughts that we as councillors have very little input into the capital works program, and I respect and understand that it is a city-wide program, but can I shout it out again? I truly feel that councillors should have ability at the front of the budget to share our divisional needs, our hotspots, our voice for our communities, and these identified needs should be given weighting of consideration. I'm not asking for influence of budget, and I'm asking yet again to be able to share my community's greatest concerns. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Golay?
Well, thanks, Madam Chair. I'm not going to read off anything. Firstly, I want to thank the residents of the Redlands for having the faith in myself and my colleagues to bring this budget down today. Without your significant contribution through rates, we couldn't actually sit here and deliver the services that the council does. And as a board, we get to sit here and deliberate for months, working with an amazing executive team under Mr. Chesterman and his general managers and their various departments who actually put forward the efficiencies and requirements to keep this organisation on its feet with the lights on and the business of council being delivered on a daily basis. And it's interesting, coming into work today, I saw the mowers on the side of the road, the gardeners out in the garden, the rubbish being picked up. There's literally nothing that this council won't bend over backwards for its community. And we simply couldn't do that without the community's contribution of that $1 and so many cents per week. And I know since I actually come into council, there's two very challenging areas. One is development, or planning and development, where we're hindered by the state's influence, and then there's the budget, because it doesn't matter what happens in the community, it impacts council, whether it's a telephone call about animal management, whether it's someone's graffitied a park, it's a cost. And every time someone says, can I have X up to gold-plated standard, there's a cost. And when we talk about divisional aspects, we, under the Act, are placed in this position to represent the entire city. However, Division 3 hasn't lost out in this budget at all. So the residents who use the rugby league, the netball, the bridge club, the pony club, the art facilities down in the Pinklands area, rest assured that one of the major projects that's being investigated is the Heineman Road project, which will free up and deliver much needed resources and sporting facilities to accommodate the requests from the residents who use Pinklands. If I was to sit here today and beat my chest and say, well, I'm not going to support the budget, I would essentially be turning my back on the 5,000 plus users of Pinklands in my division who are looking for a solution now. A solution that was meant to be coming some 30 years ago. As far back as Councillor Ogilvie, when he was sitting here advocating for a sporting precinct in the Redlands, it's being delivered, and if we don't do it now, then when? Simple as that. Panorama Drive. The Redlands residents are demanding stronger, better roads in and out of the Redlands. That's being delivered. Division 3 and Division 7 will obviously get the best bang for buck out of that, okay? But across the city, it will help free up and move people like they've been asking. And if we don't do it now, in this budget, then when? It's as simple as that. So to the residents, thank you. Thank you for making the contribution to keep this business turning over. There is not one, and if I just backtrack a bit, I was in Canberra a week and a half ago. We can become very siloed in the Redlands and not have an understanding of the bigger picture of what's happening. There was 527 councils represented nationally in Canberra. They all came forward with the same issues, the budget. How much do we need? Can the federal government prop us up with federal assistance grants? When is the state going to kick in and contribute? Everyone was saying the same thing. If it's not housing diversity and equality and affordability, it is the budget, because the costs go up everywhere. Nationally, it's going up. World events have triggered this. You only need to go down to your local car dealership and try and order a brand new car. It'll be an 18-month wait, and they can't guarantee you the price that you're signing the contract on today to 12 months' time.
Councillor Goldie, I'm just running of time.
Thanks, Madam Chair. The point is, we're all ratepayers in the city. We've all made a contribution, of which I thank you for. I can guarantee that for Division 3 and this city, it will be a very strong business as usual. We are committed to driving efficiencies. We have found efficiencies. And so you can have the confidence that you're simply not being ripped off. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Goldie. Councillor Berridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and our CEO and our executive leadership team. While acknowledging the huge amount of work that's gone into this report, indeed the whole budget, I'd like to thank all the officers and all the financial staff for their support through this process. There is a responsibility to keep rates as low as we can while delivering a responsible operational budget. And we've heard today from our CEO that we're in very tough times, and his comments were very sobering when he said they're mostly from a mum and dad rate base. And that's something we do need to take in. Like Councillor Boglary, I've never been comfortable with the magnitude of our corporate plan, and it's been hard for me to agree to the thinking without any argument or debate with the impaction on our basic needs, including youth sport. We need to put fresh eyes on how we can fund our sporting needs, which is now critical. Our baseball club was in crisis talks last year for lighting, and there's nothing in this budget to help them or our softball club, and we're still not seeing a sports stadium anywhere in this pipeline. Heinemann Road, as Councillor Golley has mentioned today, will service some of our sporting needs, but certainly not all. We are a long way off that. Heinemann Road Adventure Precinct plans for millions of dollars to be spent on recreational picnic areas, water play and nice to haves, which does nothing for our struggling sports clubs who need to plan for possible Olympic selection. I will always question why we're progressing all these nice to have projects when clubs are battling to turn the lights on and crying for help. These are their basic needs. We have a major shortfall of available land for sport, and the priorities for funding our critical sporting needs should take precedence. I'm calling for more rigour, more meticulous attention to objectives, and I'm calling for fresh eyes on the scope of priorities inside our corporate plan so we can deliver more for basic needs, including park embellishment, to what has been identified as mostly our 90% rate base. We need to put fresh eyes across the corporate plan, and we need to put fresh thinking as to how we can possibly buy back land for sporting venues that is centrally accessible by public transport in the city. For 3 years, I've been trying to get better wildlife signage and money spent for solutions to improve Avalon Road. The constant roadkill is unsustainable, and while I've been in discussions with the State Minister for better planning, there's a feeling of hopelessness because Avalon Road is a council-owned road and there's no budget for long-term solutions, or short-term for that matter. The corporate plan goal, natural environment, does not deliver any protection to the high level of roadkill, nor does it provide protection to our critically endangered shorebirds, who are constantly at risk from development threats and dog off leash, which was brought up on ABC radio yesterday. While we have local laws, there's no funding for the policing of these laws. We are better educated now on the threats of extinction, yet the highly credible ecologists tell us Toondah Harbour PDA listed in our corporate plan goal thriving economy objectives will severely threaten the shorebird's existence. We need fresh thinking and positive discussions how the corporate plan should work to protect all threats for our endangered wildlife. A thriving economy depends on a healthier environment. The two go hand in glove. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barridge. Next will be Councillor Hewlett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd first of all would like to thank the CEO, the CFO, the ELT for the amount of information they've brought us over the budget workshops. I sincerely appreciate it, and they do an amazing job at the information they provide us. I'd also like to thank the workforce across council completely, because there's not many officers here that I don't think put their love, their heart and soul into their job, and I think the leadership in this council is fantastic. I've heard words such as equity and fairness and responsible and balanced, and over the last several years I've really failed to see that in this council. Councillor Hughes pointed out about the CapEx. When I first started in 2012, the CapEx, the councillors did have a say in the CapEx, and you have a 10-year plan seeing what's happening. Now we fight once a year and we see things fall off below the line and then they disappear. I can give you examples. The Coochie-Mudlow Island car park still flooding after 11 years. Curlew Creek on Coochie-Mudlow, the drainage hasn't been addressed there. The Cascade Garden fountain repairs and upgrades have not been done. There's no foreshore parkland at Arana Esplanade when we're trying to get parks and barbecues across there. And all these things that are just, should be matter of fact, and things that I've discussed with officers, many of who have left now, are just not getting done. So I just don't see how there's any fairness and equity in that. And it disappoints me. Every year I dislike our capital work budget because it just turns into nothing but arguments and where's that thing gone below the line? It's disappeared, it's gone. I discussed that with this officer 10 years ago. Where is it? And I just don't like it. I mean, the Coochie Semp's another issue, and I have to commend Nicole Davis and the Marine Infrastructure team for delivering some of that this year, but I'm only getting 25% of what was budgeted for because of resource increases. And because that's operational budget, it's probably likely to disappear and there's going to be no more sand put on that beach, which is an extremely important thing for the Coochie-Mudlow Island and for the tourism and environment of the city. So I'm disappointed. I'm really concerned about the ability for us to deliver these major projects and not jeopardise many other projects in the city which I believe deserve to be attended to. I'm really concerned about those projects. I've seen some of the figures. I don't have a lot of faith going forward in those projects, and the operational cost of which was going to be the Whitewater facility, which is now called the Resilience Hub for some reason, the operational cost of that, we don't even know it. So I just can't support this budget this year, I'm sorry. So thank you.
Councillor Bishop.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors, and also officers for your exemplary guidance through the CEO, ELT, and to Finance for so much advice, robust feedback, exemplary planning, and preparation, and taking us all through the journey of the budget as we go over these last 16 workshops that we've had, or touch points. I want to acknowledge that the driving force for this council is the corporate plan. And as I've expressed last year and previously, while I did support that corporate plan, I had great concerns that the community was not consulted during the creation of that plan. It was 11 councillors, and that guides everything that officers do, and that's just the way that strategically and we are designed. The concern that I have going forward, though, is that some of the costs associated with the ambitious nature of some of the projects that are in that plan propose and present a huge impost on the future of the city. My concern is that by focusing on some of those larger projects, there's just two of them, being Heinemann Road Sports Area and the Birkdale Community Precinct, being a total of $500 million. I've been suggesting with councillors that we look to cut our cloth and reduce the scope so we can save money on those projects, and the answer coming back to me is a no from councillors. Now, I note that officers are doing everything they can. My concern is with council and our choices to focus over the horizon on the future on some large, big ticket items, and I hear people talking about entrepreneurial vision and the need to drive forward with extra projects that we're going to shove in to a capital works and operational works plan going forward in a city where we've got limited resources, limited capacity to pay, and the community have not been consulted about our priorities in relation to the corporate plan. As mentioned last year, I endorse our principle-based decision making. I support officers rolling into 2 and 3 year planning and procurement for delivery of projects. I think there are great benefits there, and I really appreciate the work officers are doing with BAU. But given that we're seeing increased volatility and officers are needing to be nimble as we adapt to the enterprise landscape, I've got concerns about the level of annual carryovers and our proposed budgets each year. In future, what I'd like to see is greater transparency and visibility regarding our proposed capital works plan. Brisbane City Council publishes a suburban works program that lists all the roads, footpaths, pergolas, and projects that they're going to be doing during the course of a year. I'd like to see us include something like that. And also they include a 3-year review of last year, preview of next year. They do backcasting and forecasting, and they reconcile which projects have been delivered, which ones were carried over, which were cancelled, and where the funds flowed. I'd like to see that in our future budgets so that we can keep an eye on the corporate plan and its impacts. And I want to see us working better with our community to make sure that the projects that we are intending to proceed with are the ones that the community values. I'm glad to see this year funding for Willard's Farm restoration, and there's also, that's going to be a really important state heritage listed project. It's 8 years since council bought that parcel of that property, and it's long overdue that we get that work done. There's going to be budget renewals in roads for Frank Street, Galley Way, Mary Pleasant Drive in Division 10, and there will also be park re-imaging for Fuchsia, Carignan and Lobelia Courts. It's good to see William Taylor Sports Ground will have $1.2 million to start stage 1 of upgrades, car park, drainage and toilets. However, I remain concerned that future stages and sequencing for works have been taken to community consultation. They've not yet been scoped, designed, or therefore they're not eligible for funding. So it seems that the patient residents of Birkdale and Thornside don't have any guarantee that the netball courts, cricket facilities, playground, BMX, skate and recreational play elements there that are long overdue will be delivered anytime in the next capital works. Again, Queen's Esplanade, the foreshore erosion mitigation works. I've been asking for that to be done for 11 years. 7 years ago we consulted on that.
Councillor, just running of time.
Thank you. I asked for cultural heritage work to be done on that. That will not be proceeding. I'm really concerned about the Birkdale Community Precinct. Focus on the whitewater rafting element. There's so much on that site. It should be an ecological sustainability showcase, and I'm concerned that the focus on the whitewater rafting facility is actually, which will be handed over to the state and federal government, is actually going to put a real impost. We've got a naturally wonderful brand and logo, and I think that we should be trying to be ecological sustainability stewards on that site. I am concerned about non-renewal ratios versus renewal. We've always been told that we should do renewal over non-renewal, and the concern with the corporate plan is that we are getting that out of sequence, and that has why I have concerns. It's not with the officers or the proposed budget for this year, it's going forward. I think we're getting further and further away from communities' expectations, and it runs a risk of being a legacy concern that will become more and more of a problem as we face the headwinds of a changing landscape and all of the issues that are going on globally. So I withhold my support.
Thank you, Councillor. If I could now go to Councillor Edwards, acknowledging this will be your last budget response.
Thank you.
So over to you. Finish on a high note.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Lucky last. I thank all the councillors for their input and what they've said. It's good. For myself, I'm not surprised with the comments of either of you, anything we've said. And for those that are watching this, that shows another level of challenge to deliver a budget. Since I've been here 12 years, I've never seen a budget that everyone's agreed on, and that will continue, but it just shows how difficult it is to bring a budget together. The CEO, Mr. Chessman, thank you for the words you spoke introducing this, because it highlights the challenges that we've got, the real cost increases, and I can say that the cost increases are only going to continue, so the cheapest time to build anything is now. Every year it's only going to get more expensive. So today is the 12th and last time that I participate in voting on an annual budget. This year's budget has been an extraordinary challenge for officers and councillors alike. And the conditions of supply chain issues, surging costs of goods and services, unpredictable future interest rates, workforce shortages in different sectors, are just some of the considerations that we've been faced in delivering this budget. Regardless how we each vote today, every councillor here has in some way contributed to the shaping of this budget. We have managed to keep the rate increases below the blended consumer price index. However, every increase in costs adds to the personal financial burden on our community. In my opinion, the bigger picture is that this nation must find a way to lower inflation to sustainable levels than we are currently experiencing, and move away from a just-in-time supply chain to an always available system. I don't want to repeat what others have said, other than to say that this budget ensures the continuation of services, maintenance of our infrastructure, and further delivers citywide improvements for our community. And I'm truly heartened to see the return of the road setting programs to the islands, and I look that it won't be the too distant future that the roads will be sealed. But I'd just like to say, sometimes councils might get the feeling that the Islands Committee are not appreciated. By far, the majority of them are, and they say that to me all the time. They appreciate what this council does, and they understand the limitations of a council of a size such as ours. I want to recognise and thank those who did the bulk of the work, being the executive leadership team, and particularly Executive Group Manager Deborah Cole and the team from Financial Services. It's not an easy task to explain and provide greater advice to councillors. I know we're challenging to deal with at times, but we all thank you for your work. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. And just before I ask us to resume our meeting proceedings, I just wanted to make a couple of comments, if I may. There were just some comments made around the room, and I think probably just need for the record to be correct. There was lots of reference to Heinemann Road, and due to some of the complexities that was touched on by a couple of councillors, there is no actual new spend for Heinemann Road in this next budget, unfortunately, although there is some carryover. That's as a result of other hoops and hurdles that we have to overcome. However, as Councillor Golay did say, it's a really important part, and if I can use an example or a word that's been put to us, it's Tetris, because until we actually find a way to build those facilities, the four major football fields, we are unable to extend opportunities across the rest of the city. I also just wanted to refer back to the Whitewater Facility Resilience Centre, which has been a discussion for councillors, because it will provide, in a climate changing world, opportunities for resilience training both in Whitewater and potentially in urban flooding, which obviously has economic benefits to our city, but more importantly social benefits to the whole Oceania. There has been a broad discussion in regards to that. The other point about the size of the actual capital budget, which has very little impact actually on the rate increases that have been referred to today, is that we have multi-year contracts and some big projects, such as Councillor Golay referred to and Councillor Mackenzie, the Wellington Street Panorama upgrade. That's over a 3-year period. We have 3-year contracts, which means that we have big projects that don't require quite the investment of time and resources that traditionally, many years ago, when some were first elected, that we had to do. And probably just one other thing I wanted to bring to the community's, attention, is that the difference between local government, predominantly, particularly in Queensland, and other levels of government, is that you get a very transparent bill. From Redlands, it's 4 times a year, which actually tells you what you're paying. When it comes to state and federal government taxation, every time you turn on your car, you turn on a light, you flush your toilet, you are paying taxation to those other levels of government. So hence, less transparent and difficult to equate for people as to some of the costs we saw mentioned or heard mentioned earlier. Put that into context, you heard about the number of bridges, roads, footpaths, etc., coastline that we manage. Local governments receive in total 3% of all national taxation. And so hence, when we talk about cost shifting down to us, we're still managing that in what is a declining amount of money coming from other levels of government. And so it's always difficult for us, because we all think about that rates bill when we sit around the room, and every councillor has had input to this over those 16 touch points. Not any councillor here is 100% satisfied with the budget, and obviously we've heard some discussion, and as Councillor Edwards has said, it's not surprising, but I just wanted to make sure that those points were made to be clear for those who are. Oh, and by the way, we do fund local laws compliance, perhaps not to the level that some want, but we do actually have funding for that, obviously, because we have staff doing that. So with that, councillors, I now ask for a mover, if I could, and seconder, as you've had an opportunity to speak, and as I said earlier, we've given quite a bit of time to each of you to present your twos and fours and against on the budget. So once we resume standing orders, in accordance with 7.5.6 of Council meeting standing orders, I'll be limiting debate to no more than 2 minutes per councillor. So with that said, if I could have a mover and seconder, thanks. Moved Councillor Edwards, seconded Councillor Mitchell. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried, and Councillor Tolte has just left the room.
Just very brief, Madam Mayor, just saying that we move the statement of estimated financial position for this year, noting that it's an estimate of positions, and until end of year adjustments are made and audited, then those figures will not be official. Thank you.
Any speakers against? There being none, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Councillor Tolte has not yet returned. The next item is 5.2, National Competition Policy Requirements for Significant Other Business Activities in 23-24. Mover and seconder, thanks for that. Moved Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Edwards. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Mackenzie?
Just to note that it's a statutory requirement under the Local Government Act to identify and present activities that council decides to apply the Code of Competitive Conduct to, and these are being city water and city waste.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5.3, debt policy, moved Councillor Hughes, seconded Councillor Edwards. Would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. I would actually. The debt policy is here. It's been around a very, very long time, but we know that it's not used very much by our residents because we encourage our residents to get in touch. If you're having any, oh, sorry, I've got the wrong one.
Debt
Yeah,
policy, Councillor.
yes.
5.3.
For our debt. So I'm sorry, that is my bad, 100% my bad, I take that back. This is our financial year in accordance to the sections of the Local Government Act is to adopt our debt policy. Thank you. My bad.
That's okay. Any speakers against? Councillor Bishop speaking against.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. While I appreciate officers' advice that debt is a useful and actually necessary part of infrastructure delivery going forward, I'm going to withhold my support for this on account of the fact that some of the issues as mentioned with regards to the corporate plan, I'm just concerned with the level of debt.
Councillor, just to be clear, he's not speaking to the item, it's the policy that we're debating.
Okay, I'll withdraw.
So
Thank
just to be clear, that's the policy which is about intergenerational funding.
Yeah,
so
it's
just
the levels, thank you.
So would you like to sum up, Councillor Hughes? In which case, Speaker
No.
4? Speaker 4? Sorry. Oh, sorry, you want clarity? Question? Yeah.
Just on Councillor Bishop's lines, I agree with the actual debt policy and especially the policy statement as to why we would go into debt. I think page 26, I think it is, the debt policy, the actual policy, not the report. On page 29 is a forecast of debt, and I, like Councillor Bishop, am concerned about what we're forecasting we actually go up to in later years.
So shall I get a response to that
So my
question?
question is, I agree with our policy statement, but I don't agree with our forecast. But by voting for this today, knowing that all forecasts are rubbery, are we still agreeing to more policy than the forecasts?
Yes. Deb?
Good morning, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Through you as Chair, thank you both Councillor Boglar and Councillor Bishop for the opportunity to talk to this. It's a requirement of legislation that Council adopts a debt policy, and in that requirement we actually have to put in certain details which are on the screen in front of you. In line with prior years, whilst I probably don't agree with the word rubbery, it's the best information that we have today, and is categorically subject to change. You can change both the budget that you're about to deliberate and vote on during the year, and of course you can change any outer year. So based on the best information we have today, with the best economic forecast we have as at today, they're the figures that we have put forward. And I know, both speaking to both of you before this meeting, we have very low levels of debt, so as an accounting professional I've got no concerns that what we have on the screen in front of you is both serviceable, not only from the size of this community but also from the cash balances that we hold in the bank and the interest that we'll raise on that. Happy to take further questions or comments.
Oh, it was just a comment to say thank you to Deb, because I think we've all learned how volatile the world is at the moment, and though our policy is, I think, very vigorous, and I agree with Deb at this point of time, that's fine. Going forward, I didn't want to agree to those amounts when we really haven't a clue what's going to happen.
So can I just just get a confirmation from Deb in regards to her overall position when it comes to debt, please? Just to give comfort, because obviously...
No, I was saying I know that
No, I'm
right
not
now
asking...
we're okay, but going forward, because we don't know what's
But
going
that's
to happen,
that's every year.
and Deb has confirmed that we're not
Thank
agreeing
you.
to those out
Deb,
figures.
can you just confirm our overall position when it comes to debt? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you as Chair, thank you again for the opportunity to talk to the debt policy. So, as you see in the monthly financials, Council has an extremely low amount of debt on its books, both current and non-current, so the current debt being payable in the next 12 months and the non-current debt being payable after that. It's in the order of less than $40 million. Cash balances alone are in the order of $250 million, and Council has an asset base in the order of $3 billion. So in terms of servicing that debt, no concerns. and you might recall that we invited the Queensland Treasury Corporation out, and it presented what was called a bubble graph, and at that time, I think from memory, Council had less than $400 of debt per capita, so debt per person in the local government area, and the benchmark that was talked at the time but isn't publicly available for me to show you at the moment was $4,000 debt per capita. So Redland City Council was sitting at under $400 debt per capita, and the Department of State Development, Local Government Infrastructure and Planning was considering a target of $4,000 debt per capita. So that might bring it to life a little bit for you, councillors.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no other, I'll take that as a speaker against. Any other speakers for? Yeah, Councillor Mitchell?
Yes, just wanted to speak to the debt policy is very robust, and just wanted to point people to the principles that underpin it, where all borrowings are for long-term intergenerational benefit, and there are also elements within the principles of the debt policy that talk to how we pay those interests to keep the cost of borrowing low as well. And it is very interesting for residents to have a look at those principles, and because of the volatility of forward forecasting, it is those principles that will keep us in good shape. Thank you.
Any other speakers against? Back to you to sum up, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Debt is debt is debt. This is a legislative requirement as has been outlined, and the debt policy forms part of Council's financial management system. Thank you.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Those in favour? Councillor Boglari, Mitchell, Golay, Edwards, Tulty, McKenzie, Hughes, Berridge, Williams. Those against? Councillor Hewlett and Councillor Bishop. Thank you. Next item is 5.4, councillors, which is categorisation of land for differential rating, 23-24. Moved Councillor Tulty, seconded Councillor Bishop. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Tulty?
Just very briefly, Madam Mayor, this is simply confirming that we have a schedule of categorisation of land for differential rating purposes, and explains exactly what those rating categories are and how they are grouped, how properties are grouped in order to collect rates. So it's a legislative requirement, and this confirms our rating category schedule. Thank you.
Speaker against? No, being none, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Item 5.5, environmental and coastal management separate charge, 23-24. Mover and seconder, thanks. Moved Councillor McKenzie, seconded Councillor Boglari. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor McKenzie?
Just briefly, the environment coastal management separate charge is used to fund the protection, management, promotion and enhancement of our local environment and biodiversity, and the management of our foreshores and mitigation of coastal hazards. The charge will fund activities such as enacting the recommendations of the shoreline erosion management plans, coastal hazard adaptation strategy, bushland and fire management, weed control, environment education, track control, maintenance and repairs, conservation initiatives related to our Carwala Conservation Plan, maintenance and enhancements related to our Bay and Creeks Plan. And that's not an exhaustive list.
Thank you. Speaker against? Question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to ask, because it is an important part of both the environment and coastal management as a separate charge, just wondering where people can go to see those breakdowns of costs and where they're going to be charged. I think as we're moving toward...
Thank you. I'll just get a response to that. That's a question, so you don't need to speak to it, Councillor. Just I'll get CFO to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you as Chair, thank you, Councillor Bishop, for the opportunity. So if you're talking about the actual amount, the ratepayer will see that on their rate notice. If you're talking about the works behind that amount, that is something that a ratepayer could write in and ask for. We don't traditionally publish that. We've got the revenue statement that talks to the intent of that separate charge. So there's an overarching comment in the revenue statement that you'll see further on this agenda, but we wouldn't normally publish works line by line. But if someone had a particular interest, they're more than happy to reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to take that question and tell them about it.
Thank you. Can I make a comment on that?
If you're speaking against it, I'm aware of standing orders, councillors, so any speakers against? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Oh, pardon me, voting against, Councillor. So those in support, Councillor Boglari, Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Golay, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Talty, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Berridge, Councillor Bishop, Councillor Williams. Those against, Councillor Hewlett. The next item is item 5.7, which is the 5.6. Pardon me, let's cross it off. Mover and seconder. Thank you. Trying to get through the agenda quicker. Move Councillor Hughes, seconder Councillor Boglari. Would you like to speak to it?
Thank you. As I mentioned in my budget speech, this one is really close to my heart with the in the report list of works there, so happy to move. Thank you.
Any speakers against? There being none, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried unanimously. Now item 5.7, which is the Redland City SES Administration Separate Charge. Mover and seconder, thanks. Move Councillor Talty, seconded Councillor Boglari. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Talty?
Oh, very briefly, Madam Mayor. This is a small charge that is paid by each property in the city, and the money collected goes toward opportunity for our amazing SES volunteers to be able to get access to the training and equipment that they need in order to help our community during times of crisis. Thank you.
Just basically, this special charge is paid by the owners of the land on the southern Bay Islands, and it funds the Rural Fire Brigade over there. The amount determined is done through the local area finance committee, which is chaired by the QFS, and we're just passing on. It's great value for money because it's actually less than $1 a month per property to have that fire service.
Thank you. Any speakers against? There being none, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? That's supported unanimously. Thank you. Item 5.9, adoption of budget estimates and fixings of rates. Mover and second. Thanks. Move Councillor Mitchell. Seconded Councillor Mackenzie. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Mitchell?
I think there's been a lot of conversation already, but just once more acknowledge the amazing collaborations over really the whole year that ends up in the adoption of these budget estimates and fixing of rates and charges.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we've spoken about the fixing of rates, and we've talked about our budget, but I would really like an opportunity to ask our CFO, if we could, when we've worked all of these numbers through, they've gone through as we talk about the sausage machine, the crunchy machine, but really, how did we end up with these figures? We talk about these, the CFO, when we talk about the process of going through to end up with these figures. Thanks. For our wider community.
Our principle-based approach.
Yes, that's exactly right. Thank you.
Other 16 hours. Or
Actually,
30.
Thank you, Mayor. Our CFO can speak for that long on our budget and our finances. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, through you as Chair, thank you, Councillor Hughes, for the opportunity. I think you've all summed it up very well, to be honest. As you know, we have a financial strategy, so that's a 10-year forecast, a roadmap, sometimes we call it, and that is our starting point, year 2 of that strategy. We start to use as our budget. In terms of where you as a council have directed the officers to land on today, I think it's primarily credit to you for holding those workshops, coming back and asking us to remodel the rates. So Michael at the back of the room does the rate modelling. He also models, him and his team model the other charges. I think your dedication to keep looking and scrutinising through the opportunities that we have. I know that you held a workshop on the 8th of June, which was only 2 days after the RBA cash rate was increased by a further 25 basis points, and the intent of that session, you were asking us, is there anything further that the council can do to help with the cost of living pressures? So to get to this point where it's a 2.1 million operating deficit has really come at you asking us to keep remodelling. The budget's very iterative. I think, Madam Mayor, you spoke to a principle-based process. That's really in the revenue statement, you can see that we've got rating categories, which they're clearly defined, and then we have a relationship between each different category. What we are trying to do in terms of that is to ensure that year on year there's comparability, that a similar number of properties are raising the amount of rates, so we're not asking for more revenue from a lower number of properties. Properties move between rating categories all the time, so we're trying to be fair and equitable in line with the 8 principles that you have on your revenue policy. So the $2.1 million I think you've talked to around the table, that's the 2 packages that you've got to support those. One is the 1.5 million wastewater subsidy, and then the $500,000 grant that applicants will be able to apply. But I think that's the overall process. Many workshops. You ask us to remodel, look at better ways, different ways. The CEO had the initiative of an expenditure review committee, and we literally are ensuring that as custodians of public money we're doing the right thing.
You have a question? For Deb?
Hi, Deb. We briefly spoke about this on Friday, so I just want to make it clear now for residents. So this is what we were talking about. The average general rate increase is 5.99% on the document property category 1A, yet the documents that we're adopting say the minimum general rate increase is 4.65. Can you explain to the residents why there's a difference there in the recording, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you as Chair. Thank you, Councillor Burridge, for the opportunity to talk to that. So yes, I think we've heard this morning the increase in the minimum general rate. So the minimum general rate is different for each different category, and we've heard that both the Mayor and the CEO have acknowledged the majority of properties are residential. So a residential owner-occupier sits in rating category 1A, that's on the screen I believe. The minimum general rate's gone up by $53, and that is an increase of 4.65% if you did the maths. $53 over the 52 weeks in the year, or $1.02 per week. That's 4.65. Not every property's on minimum general rate. The other properties we normally try and help the ratepayer understand there's an average valuation that we use, and an average valuation that has a land valuation averaged across the city has increased its general rate by 5.52% from memory. We pulled out an average general rate notice for you. The 5.99 that you referenced, Councillor Burridge, that is the total increase in Redland City Council rates and charges for an average property, with assumptions on average water consumption and bin use, etc., etc. So that one's a little harder because every property probably has a different connotation of waste bins and water usage, but we try and produce, as you know, an average rate notice for you, and it's 5.52 for an average general rate increase, 4.65 if that property was in category 1A for minimum general rates. I hope that's clear. It is a little complicated.
Yeah. Councillors, we have workshopped this, so I'm not going to keep taking more questions, because if you don't know it now, then you never will. But what is your question? Is it related to that, Councillor?
No.
No, it's not a question. Is it
It's
a question?
a question.
Okay.
So thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to our CFO, and thanks for all your work. As mentioned in my budget speech, Brisbane City Council does the backcasting, forecasting, and they also make visible all of their suburban works program, as they call it.
This is not to do with this particular item. We're talking about setting of categories.
Okay. I was
So
just
you probably need
asking
to take that
how we
offline.
where would be the appropriate place to
That's-
ask how we could make that visible?
It's not. We're not talking. It's a point of order. In fact, you're not talking to the item in front of you, or
Thank you.
asking a question based on that. So with that, if I can perhaps hand back to Councillor Mitchell if he wishes to sum up, if you need to.
No, I don't think so, Madam Mayor. Thank you
Alright.
very much.
So I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Sure now, Councillor? Thank you. Councillor Mitchell? Those in favour, thanks. Sorry. Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Golay, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Tolte, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Williams, and those against, Councillor Boglari, Hewlett, Berridge and Bishop. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, councillors, which is the adoption of due date period for 23-24 quarterly rating. Mover and seconder, move Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Edwards. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Mackenzie? Pardon? Oh, golly. I'm not trying to rush through this at all. sorry. My apologies. 5.10, financial strategy. Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
As required under the Local Government Act, this is council is required to present a financial strategy and a long-term financial forecast as part of the budget. The strategy is council's long-term financial plan that is underpinned by a series of policies, plans, risk responses and associated financial stability and sustainability targets to measure performance. The strategy establishes the financial framework under which sound and sustainable financial decisions can be made.
Speaker against the financial strategy? There being none, I put the motion. Those in favour? You have a question?
I just wonder, I would like to ask if this is the moment when I can ask that question about visibility of those. Sorry.
Sorry, I don't know what your question is. So you want to talk about the financial strategy is basically a long-term position over all the various factors that contribute to the balancing of a budget or likewise. So I'm not quite sure. Okay, I'll just put I'll put the motion. I'm pretty sure you could get an answer to that question offline anyway. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Those in favour, Councillor Boglari, Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Golay, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Tulty, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Bishop, Councillor Williams. Those against, Councillor Berridge and Councillor Hewlett. Now, for 5.11, a mover and seconder please for adoption of due date period 23-24 quarterly rating. Mover and seconder. Move Councillor Tulty, seconder Councillor Edwards. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Tulty?
Oh, not really, Madam Mayor. This is just to allow the community to know and the organisation to know when we will be sending out rate notices for the financial year.
Any speaker against? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Item 5.12 is the operational plan. Mover and seconder. Thanks for that. Councillor Mackenzie's moved that. Councillor Mitchell has seconded. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Mackenzie?
Yes, the Local Government Act requires council to prepare and adopt an annual operational plan each financial year which is consistent with its annual budget and sets out how council intends to implement our corporate plan and the 7 goals of city leadership, strong communities, Quandamooka country, natural environment, livable neighbourhoods, thriving economy and efficient and effective organisation. Each goal has its own objectives, catalyst projects and key initiatives. And I'd just like to thank council officers for the good work that they do in this space.
Any speaker against? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Those in favour, Councillor Boglari, Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Golay, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Tulty, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Williams. Those against, Councillor Hewlett, Councillor Berridge and Councillor Bishop. And we have one more item, councillors, which is item 5.13 with a proposed amendment from Councillor Hughes. Moved. So moved. Bringing it up. So moved by Councillor Hughes, seconded Councillor Bishop. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Hughes?
Thank you, I would. This is a huge moment for our city that we're able to find this 500,000 within our budget to help our community, and the opportunity that we are able to give a hand up, not a hand out, across our community. On the weekend, my husband and a couple of folk delivered 2 beds to a family, and in the conversation we were able to source another bed, and my men's shed delivered a fridge to a family that through our teamwork within the city, particularly with Horaway, we were able to house someone that really needed that extra hand up. One of the biggest things we've got as a problem across the city is when we do that, we don't have any storage for our furniture that we may be able to donate. Where do we store it? So this is something that we may be able to look at. We know that there's a lot of community helping with food, lots and lots of opportunities here. So I've moved this amendment so that we can talk about the guideline that council's preparing This is new, this is going out to our community, and it'll come back to us. We'll have a really good chat about how best we can administer this across our city, and this is really important to every single person out there that may need that extra hand up. Thank you.
Speaker against? Speaking against? No, Councillor. Councillor, I just wanted to, we have standing orders, and I appreciate this. You know, for those who supported the operational plan, this was a result of some extra requests that came, and we realised that we had some extra money that we could assist our community with, and that was supported through that last decision of the operational plan. But I actually wanted to use this opportunity, if I could, to welcome a new member to our team. And she's first time to talk about baptism of fire at our budget. But if I could just welcome Brooke Denholder to the team, who will head up our communities group. So welcome, and we look forward to obviously working with you to refine the guidelines around what this will be and what this will mean to our community. So if that's okay, I'll now just put the motion if there's no speakers against. Put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. So with that, councillors, that basically concludes this year's deliberations and then adoption of the budget. Just like to thank all of you, and I can honestly say this is not the Mayor's budget. This is the 11 people and the various number of people in the back of the room that work together to put this budget together. It's not like Brisbane. It's not like Civic Cabinet, where they can decide what their before it even goes to the public, what their lists look like and what their rates look like. We do this in the spirit of democratic decision making, and it has been a particularly difficult one, as has been said by many of you, because of the current CPI for Brisbane and all the other supply issues that we've got. So I wanted to thank you all sincerely for the time you invested. Many of you in the room, not all of you, many of you in the room diligently every single time we had this discussion. So with that, I'll close the meeting. Thank you all at 11:29. Thank you.